So welcome to our live cast, Navigating Uncertainty, Leveraging Emotional Intelligence in the Midst of COVID-19. I'm your moderator, Sandra Rayner. I'm also the head of product and marketing here at the Institute for Health and Human Potential, or as we affectionately call it, the IHHP. First of all, I really want to thank you all for choosing to spend your time with us today. We know there's a lot going on in people's lives, so we're really happy to have you here. And thank you for submitting your questions. We have gone through them. And we started to notice there's a lot of common threads, which is not unsurprising. I'm just going to start with some quick housekeeping. One second here. So you should see a slide now that has two icons on it. And at the bottom of your screen or somewhere on your screen, you should see the chat function. I can see a lot of you have already started to use that. I'm going to ask that going forward, you use that for any technical issues. We have people monitoring that. So if you can't hear us, you can't see us, or you're having problems, just put something in the chat there. If for some reason you can't use it, email us at events@ihhp.com and somebody will get back to you. You'll also see a Q&A. I'm going to ask that you use that for questions for the presenters, and we'll go through some of those questions in the second half of the live cast. So those are the two places: chat for technical issues and Q&A for questions for the presenters. And now to introduce the people I have the great fortune to call my colleagues. First of all, I'd like to introduce Dr. Cranley Warren. Cranley holds a PhD in organizational psychology and a postgraduate certificate in professional leadership. As a psychologist, business leader, and a former family therapist, Cranley has a wealth of knowledge and experience in health psychology, family and organization systems dynamics, value-based leadership, coaching, and employee engagement. And we're lucky enough to have her as our Vice President of Leadership Development here at the IHHP. As our co-host and our co-founder is Dr. JP Paloufry. He's a world-renowned emotional intelligence keynote speaker. He has a background that includes teaching experience at a world-class business school, Kellogg, being an award-winning entrepreneur, noted in Profit Magazine's fastest growing companies, and he authored a New York Times bestseller, Performing Under Pressure.
Sandra, did you say all of that for my mom, who's on today?
No, she had different things to say. It was very odd.
Because my mom still doesn't really know what I do in my
neither
career.
does mine. Something about emails and sitting in front of a computer. So on top of all the things that JP does in his spare time, he also works with Olympic and NFL teams, Navy SEALs, and a whole bunch of Fortune 500 organizations, helping them leverage emotional intelligence to navigate change. Once again, I want to thank you all for joining us today, and I'm now going to turn this over to Dr. Cranley Warren.
Thank you so much, Sandra. I really do appreciate those lovely introductions. And thanks to everybody who's joined us today. I see that people are still signing on. Really happy to have you here. And thank you also for so authentically sharing the challenges that you and your places of work are facing right now during these really disruptive and uncertain times. And I'm sure you've heard those words over and over and over again. And as Sandra mentioned, we've pulled out some common themes and we'll be weaving them in and out of our overall discussion today. JP and my hope is that we can provide you with even one new idea that can help you to buffer the onslaught, to help you keep calm, so that you can make the good decisions and choices that you need to make during these times when we're all so emotionally heightened and things feel so potentially out of control. This is not your traditional webinar with a series of slides and data points. So please understand, we'll use a few slides just for those visuals out there, those who love to have transitions. But our intention really is to be real, to be accessible, and to be of service to you as we all work together to figure out how to navigate these new realities, personally and professionally. Right before we got on this live cast, a colleague mentioned to me something that it really tugged at my heart, but I know people are having to make these choices all over the world today. There's a man who's a paramedic who's leaving his family and leaving his community and going to live miles and miles away so that he is not putting his family and his community at risk and can still be in that life-saving position that he's trained for and that he's of service to do. And none of us have a rule book for these times that we're experiencing right now. And we're all just going to do our best to share insights and tools that may serve you as your guide. Anything you want to say in opening, JP, before we sort of transition into what our themes are for today?
No, lovely opening. Doesn't surprise me. Thank you, Cranla. Thank you, everyone, for being here. As you were jumping on, I saw a whole bunch of clients who we've worked with all over the world. So welcome. Hello to everyone. And if you aren't familiar with IAAHP, we're excited you're here. And as Cranla said, we're here to serve. And we've got some neat things that actually we are really excited to tell you about, which we will tell you about. But no, that's everything, Cranla.
Okay, thank you, JP. Super. So Sandra, we're going to cue one of our few slides that we do have so people can get a sense of the key themes that we have been able to pull together from their submissions. And they'll serve as a grounding for our conversations today. So the first topic that came up over and over again was change. People are going through just the depth and personal and professional levels of change. And JP is an expert in talking about change. He travels the world and helping people to learn to develop skills to navigate change. So I'm really happy that he's here today to share some of that wisdom and knowledge and experience with us. The next key topic was physical and mental well-being. So self-care and renewal. We've all heard, you know, put your own oxygen mask on, as cliche as that sounds. We aren't going to be able to be there for our family and for the transitions we need to make back to our places of work when the time comes. So physical health and mental and emotional well-being is so critically important and foundational. Uncertainty, fear, and anxiety. We're going to talk a little bit about that from a brain science perspective and how emotional intelligence skills can help you to calm your brain so that you can really gain perspective. And as I said in the opening, make the choices that you need to make in the short term that are going to also serve you well over the long term. Isolation, that's coming up over and over again. You hear it in the news. You see it in the proclamations from health councils. So self and social isolation, we're going to talk about what that is and what we need to do about that to keep ourselves healthy and whole. And finally, I'm hoping we get to remote working. It's a new experience for many people, and that can be potentially isolating as well. So JP, I'm personally very excited to have this opportunity to dialogue with you today. I know we chat a lot over Zoom video calls like this, but we rarely get to do it in a format where we're able to share ideas with other people. And that's because you're usually flying off to some city or country to deliver keynotes to large, live audiences, and I'm usually consulting with clients. So I'm really honored and happy to be here with you today to dialogue and hopefully, as you said, be of service and help people to gain some perspective and move forward. So Sandra, our first topic is change. Talking about personal and professional change. So this worldwide disruption is creating a great deal of change. We're reading about it every day. We're seeing it in the news every day. Leading people to feel under pressure. And JP, you wrote the book on pressure. And it impacts our ability to show up and be our best selves. So before I let you jump in and talk a little bit about, change and pressure and how to navigate that, I did want to just highlight some of what came from our guests here on the live cast as they were registering. They had the opportunity to share with us what's impacting them right now. And a lot of economic uncertainty, financing and funding freezes, loss of businesses, and significant revenue loss, lack of cash flow. Somebody just wrote chaos, layoffs and survival guilt. And all of this is coupled with the human experience of social and physical distancing, people adjusting to working remotely, from home and that potential feeling of isolation and loneliness. So I know we're going to cover all of that over the course of the live cast, but why don't we start with just the dynamics of change and putting that process into perspective.
Sure. I often think that we I don't want to say misunderstand change, but it's almost less change that we're dealing with, and it's more loss. There's a loss that we're all experiencing. There can be a loss of a job. There can be loss of the way things used to be in our organization. There's certainly loss of going to work every day. There's loss, and loss is difficult. And what we know is, and I mean, you're an expert in this as well, Cranla, but it brings up strong emotions, and it's hard. It's like this. So let me just say this just to start. If you are listening in today and you're feeling that loss and you're feeling strong emotions, just know you're not alone. There's a term in psychology called terminal uniqueness, where we terminally think we're the only one going through something. And maybe today we know we're not the only ones. But the truth is that this is a difficult time. There will be strong emotions. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do to kind of help you manage emotions. And I'm going to give you one idea just to start. Really try to cultivate tenderness for yourself. And that may sound soft and squishy, but I can tell you, folks at Goldman Sachs or Navy SEALs, this is something that resonates with them as they're, in the past, let's say in the global financial crisis or some of the other work we've done. We're not very good at times at having self-compassion. So let that be a start. This is hard. There is loss. And we need to kind of be gentle with ourselves. And we're going to talk about a lot of other ways to manage emotions, but that's one that I think is often missed because there's significant loss. And so, Cranley, I know in your work with Lilly and a whole bunch of other pharma and other work, you've gone through a lot of change. So you've, I'm sure, experienced that before, haven't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you talk about tenderness, it reminds me of a story that you often tell. It's really about being patient when going through change, and the story of bamboo. I haven't heard you tell that for a couple of years, JP, but it might be great to refresh on that today. I don't know if others have heard you share that story.
Hold on. Let me go look it up so I can, No, I mean, it's a great story. In parts of China, they plant bamboo bulbs under the soil, and they water it and they nurture it. And in some ways they kind of, it's not that they forget about it, but they do a lot of work. And the truth is that it can go many years without any sprouting above the soil. But we all know what is going on is there's a whole infrastructure of roots that are kind of building, and robust roots. And then that fifth year, in a 5-week period, in that fifth year alone, that bamboo will shoot up, sometimes to 80 feet tall. And so there's a real message there, which is that there's a lot of work that we're all doing in various ways: personal transformation, organizational transformation. And we might not always see the fruits of our labor. And so even right now, if we can look at what's going on as an opportunity to transform ourselves, and I mean that quite, like, this is a difficult time, but there's some opportunity here to grow some skills around how do we navigate loss and change, and how do we build skills, emotionally intelligent skills, so that we can stay in and not avoid or not make a mess. And that growth, that transformation takes time. And so that patience piece, by the way, you know me, Cranley, my word for the year is patience. It's so funny that is my word. And I'm not always the most patient, right? Like, I want to kind of get moving on things. And so this is an opportunity for me to practice. So here's what I want to say to everyone watching. What's your opportunity to practice during this time? How do you want to show up? How can you be your best self? How can you be a model for others? That's what is called for right now, so that we can all be those leaders. And, that's what I would say around change, is that it's loss, and it's an opportunity for us to really practice growing some skills, so that not only can we show up the way we want to show up right now, but when we emerge and things will come back, we'll have grown some strengths. And we're that bamboo now that's a little stronger, a little taller, a little more confident.
Mm-hmm. Oh, JP, I love that. And, in your book, Performing Under Pressure, you talk about creating or seeing opportunities versus the challenges of the crises, because the word crisis is in everything we hear and read right now. And did you want to talk a little bit about how people can do that? How can you take this time of crisis and really try to transform that and see opportunity?
Yeah, boy, that's a great one. Well, at the Institute, we are really excited by trying to be a bridge for our clients and for the world. Having one foot, if we had two legs in a sense on a bridge, one side is in that academic world. And we survey 40,000 people a month. So we're doing some of this research, but knowing what's going on in the world of academics, and then having one foot in the world of where we all need to be practical and lead and go, manage our organizations. And the truth is that we over here need this insight, but sometimes folks over here aren't very good at communicating. And so, first of all, we see ourselves as a bridge. And even on this, webinar, this live cast, that's what we see ourselves as doing. And so one of the things I'll talk about around crisis and opportunity is that this works at the brain level, right? So the translation we love to do is at the brain level. What can we do to manage our brain more effectively under pressure? And so here's what we know. When we look at any situation, and we like to think of, we call these last 8% situations. And what does that mean? Well, we're pretty good as humans at managing 92% of the situations we face. But when we get to that last 8%, the more difficult part of a situation, the more difficult situations, it has an effect on us. And there's a whole bunch of things that go on, and mainly emotions, and they get in the way, and we don't manage ourselves as well. And we fall into one of two predictable default behaviors. We either avoid or we make a mess. And so the reason I'm mentioning the last 8% is that we see what's going on as a last 8% situation. We're filled with many last 8% moments of difficult conversations or decisions to make. But to come back to crisis and opportunity, when we face a last 8% situation like this, and just again, know you're not alone. You're not the only one facing it. And so just keep that in mind. That's that tenderness, right? It's hard to do this. Know that how we see the event has a huge impact on both our brain and our behavior. So if we see something as a crisis, if we literally think to ourselves, well, oh my God. I mean, and look, there is a crisis going on in a way, but if we see it as something that's an out of control crisis, we literally have this change in our adrenaline, noradrenaline axes in our brain. And what that does is that it has a number of consequences. First and foremost, it tightens up, vasoconstricts our smooth muscle in our body, which means that we don't get as much oxygenated blood to the places that we need it, our brain, our big muscles. And we're not as effective. So it's like when we see things as a crisis, there's a whole bunch of, kind of challenges with that, but it has a very physiological effect. Versus if we can see this as an opportunity, and I didn't see who it was. I think it might have been Marcia from Brazil who said this, but this could be, if we see this as an opportunity, and she mentioned to be supportive, totally agree. And I might have gotten wrong who it was who mentioned that in the chat. But if we can try to make meaning out of what we're going through and see it as an opportunity to build skills, an opportunity to be supportive, an opportunity to be there for other people. Wow. It changes that noradrenaline, adrenaline ratio again, and all of a sudden we get vasodilation. In other words, our smooth muscle contracts in our blood vessels. Blood now, good, life-giving, oxygenated blood gets to our body, gets to our brain, and all of a sudden we can be closer to our best. And that's what we all need to be, right? And we're not going to be perfect. This is a difficult time. But if we can manage our brain in that way, it means we can show up more frequently, not perfectly, but more frequently at our best. We can be able to not get too focused on ourselves and self-referential, but think about others and serve others. And so I'm going to ask everyone, as you go through your day and you start to see yourself getting into that rumination of, oh my gosh, and kind of crisis thinking, I want you to see if you can just notice that. And that's that first part of self-awareness, that self-awareness to kind of go, how am I looking at this? Could I look at it less as a crisis, more as an opportunity?
That's so powerful, JP. I'd love to take all of that and bring it into a couple of really quick examples before we move on to the next theme, because I think what you're talking about, opportunity, is so powerful. I loved the comment about being of support to others. And I would add, really looking at your strengths and how you can leverage them in unique and different and creative ways during this time. We had a situation yesterday. We had a full class on our live online Science of Emotional Intelligence program, where everybody gets in on a Zoom platform like this, and they're actually learning the skills in a social learning platform with breakout rooms, and you have a live facilitator. And on that call, someone shared that they had just been laid off the day before, directly related to the impact of COVID-19 on their business. And the response from their classmates, people they didn't even know, people from around the world, people across many different industries, was so overwhelmingly supportive and encouraging. And in fact, there was one participant who offered to take this person's resume and share it throughout her network. These
Wow.
are the things that are cementing my faith in humanity.
Yeah.
These are the times for opportunity. And one more, I think, from the work that we do here, we're having to transform at IHHP. We're talking about our virtual programming. I mean, we have facilitator partners who've been working with us for some up to 20 years now, and they travel the world representing us and delivering our work, and they've been doing it in the live classroom. Now we're asking them to learn how to deliver that same content through new technologies on a virtual platform. Things can go wrong on a virtual platform. How am I going to look? Or do I have the capabilities to navigate it? And they're stepping up and they're seizing that opportunity. So I think
Yeah.
these are some of the things we wanted to help people to understand today. Yes, in the midst of what feels like this impenetrable crisis, are emerging these unbelievably positive opportunities for people.
Yeah. And I, it's sometimes like that avoid tendency that some of us have when, when the platform's burning, when the boats are burned, sometimes we're forced to. And I think and I say this out of great love for our facilitators, but we've been doing live online kind of virtual learning for some time. And so I think now it's forcing some of them to do that. And that's not a bad thing, actually, because, that's the way the world is going as well. So, and I think that's for all of us, certainly.
Thank you, JP. So just to summarize what we've been talking about, I loved that tenderness, being patient with yourself, looking for and seeking opportunities. And I would say try to focus on creating one unique opportunity for yourself each day. It could be something small. It could be something that's going to be transformational when we come out of this, that you've discovered about yourself, that you'll be able to bring to your new reality. And it isn't all going to happen overnight. You have this saying, JP, that I never really remember how it goes, but it starts with a T. And I'd love you to talk about that, because part of what you've coached me on is, just really hold on to the integrity of your inputs. And it's not all going to come at once. Don't focus on the outcomes, focus on the inputs. And it starts with a T. Can you share that with us before we move on to the next?
Yeah, sure. So I'll say this. The term is Tlalek Lanoi, and it came from, the language is Pali, Pali, and Pali is a language that predates Sanskrit. And so, I've spent a bit of time in monasteries, as you know, Cranley, and that's where I learned this, 30 years ago in India and in Thailand. And it's just this idea of Tlalek Lanoi means little by little, bit by bit. And it's like it's really the bamboo story. We will not see the fruit of our labor. Can we be okay with that? It will take time. Can we be okay with that? We're trying to grow. We're trying to see the opportunities. Can we be okay with things not working out? And by the way, feeling strong emotions that are difficult. Can we sit in? It's almost like, can we stay with that long enough for things to change? Because there's a natural sine wave to all stimuli, right? Comes up and it goes down. I mean, that is actually the point of mindfulness. So I'm getting a little off track, but I just want to make this point. We'll come back to mindfulness at another time. But the reason we practice mindfulness is not to calm our minds necessarily. That's an outcome. More so, it's to come into wiser relationship with what's going on in the world and in our world. And so, as we have something come in that's really frustrating, to be patient, to not react, to know that it's got a natural sine wave, and to be patient until it comes and it passes. There's real opportunity to that. But this does take time to grow these skills. And so just Tlalek Lanoi, it does help me, because sometimes, we all want things to happen right like this. And I'll just say this, we don't know how long COVID-19 is going to go. We don't. And you and I could talk for an hour about what's the evidence for one versus the other. It'll be quicker or longer. We don't know. So can we be okay with not knowing and that uncertainty? Yes. And then to take it little by little, bit by bit.
Yes. So I'm going to suggest that we transition now, because you and I could turn our live cast chat into the afternoon. And I want to make sure we get to some of the topics And thank you, Sandra, for queuing that up. The next topic is physical and mental, and I'll add emotional well-being. And people are feeling this fear and anxiety associated with the news around the virus. And they're actually battling between staying hopeful and fearful. That was one of the comments that was shared with us. And so, JP, I thought I'd kind of give you free range here for a bit because you studied at the Mind Body Institute at Harvard. And this also, ties to emotional intelligence and mindfulness and the things you were just starting to segue into. So I'd love it if you could share with us some of your learnings here and your teachings for us today.
Yeah, and like you say, gosh, we are so excited at IHHP about the vastness and the richness of resources that are available to all of us. We are in the golden age of learning. I'm not just talking about our learning products. There is so many great podcasts and videos and online learning, and use this time again as talking about opportunity thinking as an opportunity to grow your skills on learning itself. And so when we think about what can we do, I think it's pretty clear. I think most people get now that emotional, physical, psychological well-being are all intertwined. And I think as we've kind of been in our houses and isolated, it's very easy if we're not moving our bodies to start to see how that affects our mood. And it does. And I could talk for an hour on that. I won't. I'll tell you one point though. Let's start with this. Get up and move. Even if it's 15 minutes of walking a day, or maybe 15 minutes a couple times a day. It doesn't have to be like hard, intense, HIIT workouts, right? High intensity, short duration, interval training workouts. It doesn't have to be that. Because here's what we know, that when we move our body for as little as 15 minutes, our muscles, which is the largest tissue in our body, in fact, our quads are the biggest single piece of tissue in our body, secretes myokines. Myokines go into our bloodstream, cross the blood-brain barrier, and it's got 3 effects. And these are known as the hope molecules. This is some pretty recent research. It's fascinating to me. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, and it calms us down and makes us more stress resilient. I won't get into how that works, but it does. So number one, when we exercise, it has an effect on our brain to make us more stress resilient. We can handle more of the ups and downs. Number 2, it makes us enjoy pleasure more. And isn't that kind of fascinating? So that's a whole new, probably you've never heard this on the line because this is pretty new. But just myokines increase our ability to enjoy pleasure. I think pretty important today. And number 3, it actually builds trust and collaboration. So we feel more trusting. We feel like more collaborative because of these hope molecules. So move our bodies. And easy to say, harder to do, I know, but that effect from physical to mental is huge. And so I want to challenge everyone to, and I like the way you said this, Cranley. One thing you can do, one opportunity today, if you're not moving your body, I really want to suggest move because it has that kind of big impact. And, one of the things that I would be remiss if I didn't mention is that we have just launched a podcast called Last 8% Morning. Now, we know what the last 8% is. Those are those difficult situations we face. And we need emotional intelligence as a skill to manage in order to not avoid, not make a mess, but to be better in our last 8% moments. So last 8% morning is a 15-minute, and this is free, by the way, it's a 15-minute morning routine that we've been working on for like 24 years. It started 24 years ago working with Olympic athletes, but we use it with business people and folks in all, US Navy, Army, NASA, et cetera. Used to be a written kind of form. Now it's an audio. But the idea is you wake up in the morning, you listen to this audio, and it's actually my voice. You're going to be doing my 15-minute routine in the morning. So I'm guiding you as I'm doing it. And we go through this structure, and the idea is that we put together 3 things: movement in the form of walking, mindfulness, and some of the mental training exercises. So I don't want to talk too much about this, but I just want to say, and we'll give you a link to this. By the end of the week, we're going to send this to you. By the way, you can go on right now, Apple Podcasts and all wherever you get your podcasts, and download Last 8% morning. But the point is that this would be one of those habits that I think is really important to get into, because it helps us be our best in these more challenging last 8% moments. So let me stop there, because I could go on and on, Cranley, but that's one thing we can do tomorrow to help with our physical and mental well-being.
Yes, I love that. And one of our colleagues actually mentioned that he combines the mindfulness that's in the last 8% morning with his physical movement by actually listening to it while he's out walking, and he's trying to create that habit of doing it every day. So these are the kinds of things we're talking about. I saw something pop up in the chat that talked about self-discipline. And I think that's important. Talking about creating routines and establishing routines for yourself. They may be a little bit different from when you had to get up and maybe commute an hour to get to work. But what's your new normal going to be that creates that balance between physical and mental and emotional? And we know that when we are sitting in this well of negative emotions, thoughts and attitudes, and maybe feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, because we see this in social media, people are like, you know, the world is going to be eradicated by this virus, then we're under stress, right?
Yeah.
And that stress, we know, leads to all kinds of physical impacts, hormone imbalances, depression of our immune system, which is not good. We need to be fortified in case this does come our way.
Yeah.
And just,
Sorry.
please go ahead, JP.
Well, I was just going to say, you hit on something that I want to ask everyone to really check in with yourself. That discipline piece is interesting. Do you know what I used to do, and I still do at times? I wake up and I look at this, right? And what do I look at? Well, maybe texts or emails that came in through the night. Maybe my news feed on the New York Times or Washington Post or The Economist. What does that do to my cortisol levels? It spikes. Already, by the way, cortisol is highest in the morning because it needs to get us up and going. But it spikes it up even more, and that's not great. And just what you said is a great one. So that's why we developed the last 8% morning. So as opposed to like getting, spending 10 or 15 minutes in bed looking at your phone, resolve, have like really say, I'm going to commit to getting up, doing the last 8% morning. So I'm moving, I'm going for a walk, and I'm kind of taking charge. I'm setting the tone for the day. So I just wanted to pick up on that, Cranley, because I like the way you mentioned it. That cortisol we have to be careful of.
Yes, absolutely. And I was going to sort of lead JP into, what we teach around emotional intelligence. I'm hearing a lot about resilience, right now. So people who are resilient are the ones who are going to come through this time. They're going to be able to transition quickly and well. They're going to be fortified for their next opportunities, whatever they may be, because we're leaving the past behind. We may be doing something completely different when COVID-19 is over. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about gratitude, optimism and gratitude, because those are really important anchors for people that kind of get labeled as resilient. And I know there's a lot of brain chemistry evidence to support why gratitude is so important.
Yeah, absolutely, Cranley. Maybe you're mentioning, because gratitude is actually one of the part of the structure in the last 8% morning, but we want to look for ways to manage our emotions. That's kind of the real, the answer that we can bring to you is how can we help you, and how can you help yourself learn to manage your emotions more intelligently. And we make a bunch of choices during the day that we're not even aware of. One of them is last 8% situation, avoid or make a mess. Another is we feel a crisis, last 8% or not, crisis or opportunity. Another one is as we face every situation, we have a choice. Can we sit there and say, what can I feel grateful for in this moment? Now, that's not the only thing. You've got to sometimes be decisive and make decisions and do a whole bunch of things. Absolutely. But to the degree that in any moment we can also sit there and say, what can I feel grateful for right now? It does. And just for time, I won't go into all of the neurochemistry and biochemistry, but it makes a huge difference in terms of showing up at our best. And so I just want everyone right now while we're watching, what one thing right now can you feel grateful for? Just whatever comes to your mind. Having this practice to remind ourselves to do this, and that almost discipline, it does affect our physical and mental well-being. This is a practice that really matters. So I appreciate you mentioning that, Cranley, because we just know it will help us show up, and manage our emotions a little bit more intelligently.
Yes, I'm just going to thank you, JP. I'm going to share that we just got a time check and we have 3 more themes that we were hoping to be able to cover. I just wanted to acknowledge Laura in the chat I saw pop up. She says, I've heard that you can't experience anxiety at the same time that you're in a gratitude state, and that's correct because it's competing brain chemistry. So that's the point of this. Find your gratitude anchor. I have a grandson, and through this time that feels like it's chaotic sometimes and people are fearful and there's fear in my family, he's laughing and smiling in his innocence, and that's my gratitude anchor. I experience a lot of joy from spending time with him. So I'm going to suggest we now transition to theme number 3, which is uncertainty. And this really is getting more into that fear and anxiety. We are definitely living in uncertain times. There's no question about it. One of the quotes that came to mind for me from Ralph Waldo Emerson is, "Fear defeats more people than any one thing in the world." These are stressful times. We don't, as I said at the outset, we don't have reference points for how to navigate COVID-19.
Yeah.
And when we experience fear and stress, that's our body's reaction to something that's impactful. It's a heightened sense of danger. We're living in emotional intensity. So I'd love to hear from you, JP, around navigating this fear and uncertainty during this time. As we both said, we don't know how long or short this will be. So that's what the uncertainty is, and we don't know if we or someone that we love will or won't be affected by this.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, if anytime you throw out a quote, does Sandra go and put it up on the screen? Like, that's pretty impressive, Sandra. If I throw out a quote, can I get that too? I mean, it's important that we know that we amplify the negative, and it goes back millennia, right? Because we're trying to protect our designer genes, pass them on to the next generation. So we will amplify the negative. We will look at any situation and on purpose look for the worst possible outcome because we're trying to protect ourselves, protect our species. And so that's just the way that's just true. And that's not bad. That can serve us, that can save us. But we also, this is why mindfulness matters so much. Mindfulness is that, let's just operationalize mindfulness. It is the ability to pay attention on purpose, non-judgmentally, non-reactively. So the idea is, can we have things come in? Can we see it for what it is? Not overreact. And by the way, we will sometimes overreact. I do, you do, we all do. But more of the time, have a proportional response to it. And so sometimes the proportional response is to really take action, but sometimes it's just to see it and to know that there's a natural sine wave to any stimuli, to any emotion, by the way, to any situation, right? I mean, let's just remember, we've all been through 9/11. We've been through, SARS. We've been through the global financial crisis, and on and on and on. We could go on. And I don't want to minimize anything, but I just want us to have a bigger picture to remind ourselves, okay, this too shall pass. I mean, there's a reason that's such a powerful little saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so our job is to, as we feel that anxiety and that fear, tune in. And I'll give you a nice little hack. We call it our big 3. So when I'm starting to, and some of you don't know this language, when we talk about dropping markers and we're not able to think as clearly. So when we're in that situation, faced in the last 8% situation, we can start to react. So I want everyone to think about, what are your big 3 signs that tell you you're dropping markers? You're starting to have cortisol have its effect and decrease our ability to think clearly. So I'll tell you mine. There's 3. Number 1, I feel heat. I feel heat right here. I don't feel, butterflies. I don't feel shoulders. Some of my athletes, some other business people do. I feel heat. That's number 1. Number 2, I feel very certain I'm right and they're wrong. And number 3, I feel very urgent. I have to act right now. So those are my big 3. Heat, certainty, and urgency. So I want to ask everyone right now to think, what are your big 3? What tells you, okay, maybe I'm now starting to react? And this is just a way, it's an early warning sign to say, okay, am I proportionally responding to what's going on? Am I having a wise relationship to what's going on? This is almost like that, how self-awareness of emotional intelligence fits with emotional management. And this is the key, right? There's 2 viruses we're facing right now, COVID-19 and the virus of fear, unfortunately. That's not wrong, it just is. So we've got to do everything we can to really manage that virus of fear as well.
Beautifully said, JP. And that whole idea of what we focus on will expand. So if we're focusing on our fear and our anxiety, we're going to breed more fear and more anxiety. If we can focus on gratitude and actually trying to create sanctuary while we're at home and calm,
Right.
and we can breed more sanctuary and calm. And I also think about children who are not able to go to school right now, who are home with their parents, and their parents are trying to juggle so many different responsibilities, and they're feeling stressed and they're feeling anxious. You know, what will our children remember about this novel coronavirus time in history? And it makes me think of one more story that I love. And again, don't know how long it's been since you told it, but it's about the Vietnamese boat people. And I've heard you say that in the keynote, if you wouldn't mind to share that. And then maybe we'll move on to theme number 4.
Yeah. Gosh, it's been a long time since I've told that story, but I think most people in Canada and the US certainly, but all around the world, and maybe it's not a great way to refer to that time and place and those people, but we called them the boat people, Vietnamese boat people. And post-war, actually almost 800,000 people left Vietnam from 1975 to about 95. 1978-79 was the most, the years where there was the highest number of people leaving, and they left on boats. And, when I first heard it when I was really young, I thought, oh, did they come to Canada on a boat, like, across the Atlantic? Well, no. What they did is they went to neighboring Hong Kong, Philippines, Indonesia. And here's the point of the story. That was a real crisis time. These were overcrowded boats, and many people died and many people got sick. There were storms, overcrowding, but there were some boats that didn't have as many people. Nobody got killed. Fewer people got sick. And so they kind of looked into it. And what the researchers found is that there was at least one person who was the calm person in the boat. That person, that leader who, because they had that proportional response to things, they infected others with their emotions, and others kind of said, okay, we're going to be okay. And that was the difference maker. And I love that you brought up that, Cranley, because I do think like that's our challenge. Can we be the calm person in the boat? And can we grow the skills? The best part is to know that we can grow the skills. And and actually, I'm going to make this offer right now. I know we're going to talk about it maybe towards the end, but I think this is a good time. So at IWHP, we feel really moved by what's going on today with COVID-19. And we've decided that for our live online learning, which is a world-class training program, I feel like I'm boasting saying that, but I really believe that. We're making that available to people for free. So we're going to send you, how you can sign up, and we feel like we're probably going to, get oversubscribed. So we're going to put more courses on, but we want to make this available to you because we believe in this so strongly, and because we know these are skills that you can grow, so you can be that calm person in the boat. You can, in fact, in a positive way, your organization, your family, right? Like we're walking models in our homes now. More, of course, we have been in the past, but even more so, more intimately now than ever. So, we'll tell you more how you can do that. But I so love that story, and I got to start telling it more in my keynotes because it's been way too long.
I love that, JP. So I think that's the challenge for all of us. Each day, are we the calm person in our boat? I know that there's 2 more themes. Let's see if we can get through one more. Self and social isolation. And this is an interesting one. I just want to share a quick excerpt from an article. Someone sent it to me. I've been so busy this week. I haven't had a chance to even get through all of my email, but this really impacted me because I thought it was quite a profound statement. And we are all fundamentally social beings, and social distancing can have a huge psychological and physical impact. And that's why earlier we talked about self-care before we even got to talking about sort of social distancing and social isolation. And for people who live on their own, this can be a big struggle. So we were talking before about people having their kids at home and working from home. There's other situations where there are people who may be retired or elderly or otherwise live on their own.
Yes.
And loneliness can set in. You were talking about loss. I think loneliness is another thing that we really have to be aware of and watch out for in this time, and be so much more communal and figure out how we're going to be connected.
Yeah.
during this time of social and physical isolation. So I'm interested in your thoughts on that, JP.
Oh boy, this is honestly, I wish we had I do wish we had another hour, because the loneliness, even before COVID-19, is, I don't want to use, maybe I do use it, epidemic proportions. It is.
Mm-hmm.
In the UK, you know how we all have like cabinet ministers, or, depending on where in the US or Canada, or the UK, or in Brazil, or wherever we are, we have, kind of cabinet ministers in our government. Well, they have deemed this epidemic so serious in the UK that they now have a minister of loneliness, because they recognize the research, and loneliness is huge in terms of how it affects us. And here's the pattern that we see. And I don't want this just directed at men, but I want to point out a pattern. And you're familiar with this, Cranley, but women, when they're under stress, when they're facing last 8% situations or conversations or decisions, when they're faced with something challenging, their default behavior is actually to go and tend and befriend. That was some of the research from UCLA a few years back.
Yes. Yep.
So, right. So they tend and befriend, and that actually gives them a lot of resilience. Men, God love us, but we don't. We isolate ourselves. We try to figure it out so we don't look bad. For all the men who are watching, I hate to say it, that's not good enough, right? We're not doing ourselves any favor. We're not doing our community and our family any favor. I want to challenge all of us to be a bit vulnerable, to admit it's hard. Like it's hard right now, and to reach out, to find a way to connect to friends or people, because we just know right now that, we talk about smoking. The best metaphor, or maybe analog is a better way of saying it, is, we all know we shouldn't smoke. And so we don't realize we need to connect. And it's every bit as of a risk factor as smoking right now, a pack a day, when we're at the extreme end of loneliness. And so I really want to say to everyone, find ways to connect. And there are ways, right? There's Zoom video, there's a whole, but you got to be planful about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? You got to go out of your way to find ways to connect, because if you don't, that makes us less resilient. That means that when we face these tough moments, we're not going to show up at our best. And so, there's a handy little, I think this came from AA, but when we're halted, HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, we're not going to be at our best. So what we want everyone here to do is to find ways that you can be at your best. Wake up, do the last 8% morning, right? That's free. Take our EI training course. That's free. Find ways to connect, right? Just even building emotional intelligence, we have to do it with others. We can't do it on our own. So even just to grow these skills, because it's social emotional learning, we need to do it with others.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love that, JP. I've seen such interesting examples of this. There's a young man who lives in our community, and he goes for a daily walk, and we see him go on a daily walk. And it was reported that he was walking to his grandparents' home, and he sits on their porch and he calls them on his cell phone, and they look out the front window, and that's their connection. And he's doing that every day as his check-in. It wasn't enough to just call, because they're still in the same community. Yeah. And I also saw on Facebook, a friend showed their, what I would call physically distancing but socially connected Friday night, where there were people zigzagged and staggered at 6 or 7 feet apart, and they all had a cocktail, and they were talking or shouting. And, not that we want to make light of these times, but these are some of the innovative and creative ways that people are trying to stay healthy. Yep. And connected. And I don't know what we would have done before Zoom and FaceTime and, WhatsApp and all of that. So we have these tools. We're so virtually capable of staying connected. And I think we really want to encourage everybody to do so. Yeah. Other thing.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say one other thing that, that I've been seeing is there's a lot of opportunities to go online. There's online schooling. You look up your child's grade and they can do an online schooling that's available. John Legend and other artists, musical artists, are doing concerts from their home and live streaming them. Museums are giving virtual tours. So let's figure out how we can be physically safe, yet socially connected, and still connected to the culture in the world, the things that we would be enjoying. My plays got canceled this year. I'd love to go to the Stratford Festival, and everything's canceled for all of April and May. First world problem. But the museum tours and other things that are so
Yes.
culturally rich are ways that we can tap into just to keep ourselves feeling healthy and whole.
Yeah, I think that's right on. And so we need to be more creative. I think that's what I'm hearing you say, Cranley. We're coming to a point where I think it might be wise to ask Sandra, are there some questions that we have coming in from folks that we can answer? So, we've got about 10 minutes left, and why don't we take as much time as we can to answer these questions, if that makes sense, Cranley. Does that work for you?
Yeah, the note that I just received from Sandra was around the question about remote working. People would love us to sort of touch on that. So it's so great because that is our last theme.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, Cranley, because I feel like I've been like dominant, talking, blah, 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 dominating the conversation. Not entirely, but I mean, you are a pretty important executive in our organization. We went virtual. How many years ago did we go virtual?
I think it was
5?
completely virtual. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe completely virtual.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago.
So, do you have any suggestions for people about it? This is change. This is isolating. What do you do? When you're working remotely so that you can keep your spirits up, you can be as effective, you can be your best self. Do you have any thoughts on that, Cranley?
Well, thank you, JP, because it's a part of what I've been consulting with clients on who are going through this change. There's so much that comes up. Like, first of all, what does remote working even involve? Well, it involves setting up some kind of space in your home and being able to work productively from that space. I mean, I'm fortunate that I've been set up for a number of years in a home office. Not everybody has that. I have, and we have adult children. We've got somebody working upstairs, somebody working in the dining room. So we've had to figure out as a family how we make space for everyone to be able to work productively. And also, learning to navigate virtual meetings. I saw a meme the other day, which was, stop blaming the millennials for everything. We're the ones that are, we're the ones at home teaching our elderly, our senior colleagues how to virtual chat, how to get on these virtual meetings. And then leaving, I just got a note. We went virtual in 2014. Thank you very much, Danny. Appreciate that.
6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Oh my gosh, I really can't believe it was that long ago. But.
Yeah, 6 years ago. Thank you. That's so helpful. And it's not easy. I think, first of all, finding the designated space, you have to have a laptop. I was talking to a client yesterday who was, I'm busy all morning because I'm shipping out laptops to people who have to work from home and don't have a company laptop. And then they have to set up their VPN. That could take time. Then everyone's drawing on internet connections in your home.
Yes.
So these are some of the challenges. I'd say, first of all, for me, it comes back to what we were talking about when we were saying about health and well-being, and someone said self-discipline and routine. On my best days, I get up and I have a routine that is around movement. I used to run a lot. My knees are shot. So I try to get out and walk. It's really good for my mind. There's different podcasts I listen to or books, etc.
But no, you only listen to the last 8% morning. Hey.
So I think that's the encouragement, is to really look at what are going to be your new rituals. What are going to be your new habits? What are going to be your new normal? And simple things like taking a shower and getting dressed and getting to your computer on a regular time and ending at a regular time, taking breaks and making sure you have a lunch. These are all really important things from a personal perspective. And I'd say working with other colleagues, one of the things I've found helpful, and people have given me feedback that it's helpful for them, is to do a check-in. Like, how are you feeling?
Yes.
How are you doing before we dive into the meeting? That's an opportunity for personal connection. I'd also say,
sorry, I thought you were done, Cranley. I'm just very cognizant of the time, and I know there's a couple of questions.
Sure.
That I want just to make sure we address. Somebody asked how they can stop emotionally eating out of boredom or upset.
I have no idea. If you could figure that out, please tell me. Chocolate, ice cream, I'm not so good at that. I actually shouldn't make light, but actually I'm not entirely, I'm not entirely joking. By the way, Sandra's like the voice of God that just comes on from somewhere.
I know.
Like, whoa. Oz. Oh my gosh, it is like, it's hard when we are working and we are bored or we are emotional not to grab things to make us feel better. And I'll tell you, and this is really based on research, the best thing we can do is to experience. I'll give you a quick little tool. It's called ETA. It's powerful, right? As opposed to kind of beat ourselves up, as opposed to kind of try to discipline ourselves. When we feel boredom, because it's really emotions that we need to manage, or emotional upset, we want to go to the first E, which is experience it. Just really feel it. Where do you feel it in your body? Like, it sounds funny to say, but where do you feel boredom in your body, right? And there's three things you want to experience: the physical sensation, the emotion, and the thoughts. So that kind of, that triad. Okay, so just experience it. Just sit with it without reacting, or just sit. So that's E. T is, and it's almost what we talked about right from the outset. Can we be tender towards ourselves? It's not easy to feel this, to experience this. Can we have self-compassion? Really tenderness for ourselves. And then A is, can we accept just whatever it is that we're feeling right now without needing to do anything about it? And I'll tell you this, if you get from E to T, A is so easy. No, not easy. It's way easier. It's not so easy, but it's way easier. And so ETA is, can you experience the triad, the emotions, the thinking, physical sensation? Can you feel tenderness towards yourself? And then can you move to, and there's two A's actually. One is accept, just what is, just accept it. And then which is the big A, is the way I think of it. And the small A is, okay, what action can I now take? And I find that so powerful. And by the way, this can be like 10 seconds worth of like doing this. It doesn't have to be more than that. But oh my gosh, like I use this a lot when I'm going through a challenging time. And just to name it, just to feel it, to not push it away, to not like get it too attached, means that we can, again, be a wiser relationship to whatever it is we're experiencing, including food.
All right, guys, I am seeing that people are starting to leave. So just before they do, I want you to know that you can connect with both Cranley and JP on LinkedIn. And I think somebody's going to put the links to their LinkedIn profiles in the chat. But if not, they will come out in emails. And check your emails over the next couple of days. We're going to have links to our live online program. We were starting up a new Facebook community, podcast programs, all of that will be coming out in your emails. But also if you connect with JP and Cranley, they'll be able to share that information as well. This was great, guys. I always love listening to the two of you talk. Well, 98% of the time, I'd love it. But it was really great. I loved sharing the stories. I think it was really helpful. I'm seeing some really great comments. We will try to get a recorded version or some portions of this up for people so they can see it. We just always have to check the quality. And I saw somebody put in some suggestions. There's an app called Goose Chase, a virtual scavenger hunt, and to go to explore.org for other things. So I love that people are sharing their information. So thank you, guys. And Cranley, JP, I'll turn it over to you just for some last comments.
Yeah, thanks.
JP, I opened. I'll let you close. Please
okay,
do.
fair enough. Fair enough. I love the fact. So listen, send us ideas like that. And in fact, what we're going to be doing, you're going to be getting a connection to, at the end of the week, this new Facebook community that we're creating. It's called the Last 8% Project. And what we're going to do is give you these free resources, Last 8% Morning, access to the EI training program, our self-paced EI training, all of these things. But we want to build a community. And so all of these great ideas, go to the community, suggest them, because we want to each be here for every person in the community. This is not an easy time. You're not alone, right? You're not terminally unique. This is tough. You might be facing the loss of a job or, the loved one loss of a job. And there's a lot of uncertainty. So to the degree that we can all kind of pull together, build these skills of emotional intelligence, gives us a chance, right? To really come out of this. And I really like the way you said this, Cranley, come out of this more connected, stronger, right? Even more our best self. So Sandra, I want to say thank you to you first, because you've really been, and Diana, organizing this in the background in a big way. So big thanks. And Cranley, oh my gosh, we've been working together 10 years, and honestly, it is my joy to work with you. I just so love working with you and so enjoyed this last hour. So thank you so very much.
And thank you, JP. I have huge gratitude for having this opportunity with you, because as we were moving really quickly, we knew we wanted to share and be of service. We didn't know what it was going to look like. And we were able to put something together that I'm seeing in the chat. Many, many people are saying we're of value to them. So I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this today. And I think we're at time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
time. So
everyone.
go to the Last 8% go to Last 8% Project Facebook group, get involved, get engaged. Let's work together. Go ahead, Sandra.
I'm just going to say goodbye. We're going to sign off now. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye now.